Welcome to the Virginia Civics and Economics Lecture Series. At the end of each slide, there will be a 5-second delay. Use this time to complete your notes. When you are done, push play and move on to the next slide. This presentation will begin in 5 seconds. Welcome to Virginia Civics and Economics Lecture 1.8b on what your country can do for you, and let's talk about America's 35th President, John F. Kennedy. Ich dem ein Berliner. That's right. He said it correctly. I am a Berliner, not I am a jelly donut. That's an urban legend. And while the speech in Berlin is historically important, perhaps Kennedy's most inspirational speech was his inauguration address. And as you can see, a couple people showed up to hear that one. During that speech, Kennedy said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." Well, all we've been talking about up to this point is what you can do for your country. So it's time for you to ask what your country can do for you. And with that said, let's go to the next slide. The United States is unique in that it is the first country that has a government for the people, and there are two characteristics that define most of the goods and services provided by the government. Government services provide benefits to many citizens simultaneously or at the same time, like public education, elementary and secondary schools, public colleges, and public universities. Public transportation. Hampton Roads Transit is a government agency. Police and fire coverage, we call that public safety, and municipal water services and waste disposal. The government also provides services that would not likely be available if individuals had to provide them themselves. These include commercial airports and seaports, like Norfolk Airport and the Port of Virginia, passenger rail and mass transportation, like Amtrak, which is our national passenger rail company, and Virginia Rail Express, which is our local commuter rail company, and preservation of natural areas and historical sites. We're talking about national, state, and county or city parks. Those are just some examples. In fact, this place, which is the site where representative democracy first came to be in North America, is preserved by the federal government. Go to the next slide. We have yet to scratch the surface of all the things provided to us by the government. In fact, there's so much to be provided that not one government can handle it all. So we have multiple governments and services. The government provides services at 3 levels. Nationally, that's the United States of America or the federal government. Statewide, that's the Commonwealth of Virginia. And locally, that would be here in the city of Virginia Beach. And the size or scale of the service can dictate which level of government will provide it. For example, funding for building and maintaining interstate highways often comes from the federal government in order to provide citizens with a national road network to move goods and people. Also, the United States Postal Service provides all citizens with a way to communicate with each other throughout the country. Furthermore, the federal government maintains a uniform system of national defense, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard to protect citizens throughout the nation. National roads, the post office, and national defense are things that happen on a national scale by the federal government. On the other hand, public education and public safety are traditionally offered to citizens on a state or local level. So these things are handled by the Commonwealth of Virginia or the city of Virginia Beach. Here's the thing. There is conflict about which level of government should provide what services and how much of a service should be provided to citizens. That all has to do with a concept called federalism, which is coming soon to a lecture near you. Go to the next slide. Our governments provide many services to the people, but providing government services is not cheap. Remember, people love your work until they have to pay for it. And there are three ways that governments pay for public goods and services. Governments collect tax revenues from citizens and businesses. The federal government collects income tax from individuals and businesses as allowed under the 16th Amendment of the United States Constitution. Here's how it works. I get paid for the work that I do, but depending on how much I make, some of that payment needs to go back to the federal government. Other taxes include import and export fees. That's money I pay to bring stuff in and out of the country. State and local sales taxes. That's money I pay on top of how much it costs to buy a good. And special district taxes. Paying for a fire department in a rural area, for example, is a special district tax. The government can also borrow funds. Can I borrow some money, please? Yes, you can. And here's how the government does it. They issue bonds. That's government debt that is paid for by individuals. The government says, here is a bond, the person pays for it, and in the future, the person will get all their money back plus interest. The government can also take lines of credit from the National Bank, we'll talk about that later, and they do payment of debts using funds for other obligations like Social Security or pension funds. So the government has to pay the bill, there's money there for Social Security, and the government will say that Social Security money can be paid back later. We need to use that money now to pay off our current bill. Finally, the government pays for services through fees. That includes park entrance fees, background check fees, licensing fees, permitting fees, all sorts of fees. It costs money to run a government. So, do you have a permit for that garage sale? Go to the next slide. So now you know that government provides lots of services to the people, but it's not cheap. So governments will often try to find ways to provide these services cheaper. And one of the ways to do that is privatization in government. Some services that were traditionally provided by the government have either been privatized or are now provided via a joint government-private venture. What does that mean? The government provided a service. Now, the government has asked that private company to provide the same service on behalf of the government, or the government is working with a private company to provide a service to you. What does this look like? For example, highways and bridges are being funded with private money. Tolls collected on those highways are being paid to the private company running the highway. This is the downtown tunnel, and that's Elizabeth River Crossings. Tolls are collected by Elizabeth River Crossings to run the tunnel and to rebuild the tunnels in Hampton Roads on behalf of the government. Also, agencies like the Division of Motor Vehicles in New Jersey have been privatized in some states, not yet here in Virginia. And finally, charter schools are publicly funded but run independently of the authority granted to local school divisions. They are essentially private schools funded with public money. As you can imagine with these three examples, privatization is controversial. People often ask if the people are best served when the government says other people will provide services for you. Thank you for watching this lecture, and I look forward to seeing you in class.